now, as of now, and
we'll have to get the hug on recording.
Okay. And I will let people in and show the slide slowly for 1 or 2 minutes, and then the video, and then we can go.
Great.
Venga aquí esta mesita. Aquí.
Catalyst 2030 started life as a WhatsApp group among social entrepreneurs, connecting to envision real transformational change. Launched at the World Economic Forum in January 2020, it's grown into a global movement accelerating change to ensure the SDGs are reached by 2030. Fueled by passion, our 550 members working in 175 countries have collectively put in an amazing 50,000 volunteer hours, touching the lives of 2 billion people. And we're driven by values, to which we hold ourselves accountable. 2020 was a busy year, co-creating 3 reports with partners and producing one of our own. Inviting high-level guests to participate in the Catalyzing Change campaign, hosting fireside chats and expert hours, which will be continuing in 2021. To celebrate our achievements, together we placed our supporters in the limelight with the first Catalyst 2030 Awards for Systemic Change. With the blessing of the Dalai Lama, we celebrated finalists and winners in the following categories: special recognition for our early supporters, individual philanthropists, donor organizations, philanthropic intermediaries, corporate organizations, bi- and multilateral organizations, and 4 regional winners in the category of national governments. And now on to Catalyzing Change Week 2021. During this social entrepreneur-led event, we bring together diverse stakeholders in over 100 sessions to showcase their systems change efforts and the best practices that can accelerate our work in pursuit of the SDGs.
Hello and welcome, everybody. Welcome to Lessons Learned from another network that was started around the time of Catalyst 2030. My name is Suzanne Bowles, and I'm actually a member of both the Transformation Systems Mapping and Analysis Working Group and a founding member of Catalyst 2030. So I'm excited to be able to be here representing both. And I'm actually not going to spend a lot of time on myself today because we're actually joined by a wonderful panel of others, including our sort of maestro convener who began all of this work with us about a year ago, Glenn Page, Juliana, Krisztina, Mutizwa, and Tsitsi, who are all here to talk about their own experiences in this fantastic network. Very quickly, just to go through our agenda, we're going to begin with a quick round from all of our panelists explaining, where they are and what their engagement has been with the Transformation Systems Mapping and Analysis Working Group. And then we're going to hear a really interesting background around the conceptualization and the principles and the actions to date of this working group. And so for those of you who are familiar with both Catalyst 2030 and or Transformation Systems Mapping and Analysis, we're going to be engaging you in some polling and getting some of your own feedback. From there, we're actually going to go into some discussion between the panelists around driving the energy of connection at the level of a transformation system or network. And then finally, from there, we're going to do a little bit more of engagement with you to learn from you, learn together, and think about what the future might hold at this time when we have a wonderful opportunity where the world is waking up to the importance of connection and relationship as transformation, as well as the opportunity of leveraging what we have in terms of digital infrastructure and, and Glenn will get more into the global and the local and how those two come together. So first, I'd like to start out with a polling question, just to check to make sure that we have our polling system set up. Good to go. And so the polling question is, what is your degree of integration or understanding with the Transformation Systems Mapping and Analysis Working Group? 1, you've never heard of them. 2, you've heard of them. 3, you've been to 1 or more meetings, or 4, you're an active member. So please go ahead and choose your option. And as we go through our agenda today, we're actually going to introduce you to some of the concepts and practices of transformation systems. And I'll do my best to sort of reflect how those might be similar or different from those of Catalyst 2030 and where there's a lot of overlap. Okay, so we'll give that a couple more seconds. So keep filling those out. And it's very interesting to see that we've got a lot of people here who have never heard of it. So that's very exciting. We'd love to learn a little bit, at some point we'll probably have you drop in the chat box also, what is your interest in transformation systems and network development. And now, without further ado, I'm going to start inviting our panelists to introduce themselves. So great, so the poll is closed and we've got more than half of the folks in this call haven't heard of Transformation Systems Mapping and Analysis Working Group. So here you come. Welcome, here you come. And we got a handful of folks who have been with us before, so that's great too. It's great to see your faces and see your names on the list. So let's begin with the purpose of this session is really to learn from other networks and how to create a level of porousness and interaction and building learning potentially across networks at this time when there are certain things that we're doing locally or in our own context that may not serve others, but there are also sort of ubiquitous things that might serve us all to become involved in so that we can accelerate the level of support, change, and interaction that we need in order to bring about the Sustainable Development Goals and other, understandings of flourishing for people and planet. So let's first invite maybe Krisztina. Krisztina, I'd love to hear a little bit about your role and what you hope to find in the Transformation Systems Mapping and Analysis Working Group, which work stream you were in. And yeah, we're going to do a quick round of introductions first, and then we'll come back to deeper discussion. So welcome, Krisztina.
Thank you. Welcome, everyone. So first I joined the Scorecards and the Scorecard work stream in the beginning of the whole network setup. And I really enjoyed it because the main idea of the Scorecards work stream that Suzanne was also really actively, and I guess still really actively involved. The main idea was to approach quantitative and qualitative ways of measuring progress and also evaluation in a way that the underlying assumptions of different scorecards and different evaluation systems are also reflected upon, and to combine them and just really, question the assumptions and bring together different transformation approaches. So I really enjoyed the conversations there because we really created a safe space to look into those categories and to see how something is measured. And recently I've been part and a more active member of the Inner Dimensions Workstream led by Lee Eid. He's a PhD researcher at the York University. And the main idea of the Inner Dimensions Workstream is to understand better embodiment and embodied cognition and transformation from within, and the individual psychocultural and psychological approach and role in transformation. And we also would like to map out the different approaches to how transformation happens from the individual psychological cultural perspective. Yeah, and I am talking from Stockholm, but was born and raised in Budapest, Hungary. So I guess that's enough for now.
That was my next question. That's great.
Okay.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Krisztina, and welcome. And Tsitsi, how about you? What brought you to this work stream? And what are you excited about? What have you been working on?
Greetings from Harare, Zimbabwe. Good to be here. Thanks, Suzanne. Thanks, Glenn, and the rest of the team for convening us in this space. So my name is Tsitsi Maradze. I am an organizational development professional, but I work mainly as a development consultant or practitioner. So I guess I'm one of the founding members of the Transformation Systems Mapping Initiative, if I could call it that. And I was excited right from the beginning when Glenn reached out and explained the ethos of the space. And I co-convened one of the work streams, which initially was branded as South-South Exchange, but with Melina Engel from Colombia. We also then facilitated a process where we decided to just give it more meaning so that at least it would resonate with the essence of that space. So we co-created it and ended up calling it Latin Afrique. So in essence, what that is about is really to share experiences, is to explore what we can actually do differently to transform the whole person, the way we think, the way we behave, the way we relate, you know. So we're working really with a whole person approach. And also it's really grounded in a very conscious, I think, process of values, history. We talk about decoloniality a lot to actually say, you know, when we look at the SDGs or even the development discourses across the globe, what is that perhaps that can facilitate or has negated development? And we sort of concluded together that one of the missing ingredients is humanity, being able to remain human. So if you look at the development frameworks, paradigms, models that we work from, whether I am a private sector stakeholder, whether I'm from civil society, government, the frameworks that we actually have are so restrictive to the extent that we just end up ticking boxes. And because of that requirement of donors, usually, because they're always dictating what can go and what cannot, you know, fly, we're actually missing the person. And therefore, our Latin Afrique workstream is really also about reclaiming our individuality, celebrating our diversity, co-creating real, meaningful developmental processes that will actually suffice according to however we define it. We are not bound by all these international concepts around development. We are actually about challenging that, because transformation in our view also starts from the mind. We have to decolonize our ways of thinking, our ways of behaving, our ways of even approaching development. And therefore, we are really about exploring and making sure that we remain rooted in our individual preferences, our cultures. We celebrate our cultures, we celebrate our histories, we celebrate the spirituality and the spiritual connections between us. And it's really not even about judging anyone, you know, because I am always reminded and excited by the work of Robert Chambers, for example, in development. And it's always about whose reality counts. So we are here to celebrate our reality. However, the North defines Africa, for example, or even Latin America. You think we are poor, for example, but we actually are very rich. It's only that the framing that you bring into that discourse is very skewed towards maybe economic, it's very reductionist really. And it's always about the bottom line. We're not interested in that. So we really are interested about indigenous knowledge systems. We're interested about celebrating what makes, the different cultures gel and however they define development and how they've always done it. I give even an example of my own country. There have been so many prophecies of doom about Zimbabwe. Oh, they're going to die. They're now on their knees. But 2021, we are still standing. We are thriving against all odds. And it's even about who is defining our own economic development, as issues or problems, and what perspective as local citizens do we even bring to the same conversations. So, to be honest with you, we are a resilient nation. It also, for me, means that the fact that we have remained standing against even the World Bank indicators that have always put us in the doldrums, that also goes to show that there's something wrong even with that framework. There's something wrong with that paradigm. And therefore, we want to reclaim that and we want to learn what makes us resilient as a people and exchange that, including even in Asia. We actually even have colleagues that have begun to join us coming from Asia. And therefore, please join us in the fire. We are sitting around the fire. We are celebrating our humanity. We're celebrating, the different peoples and our diversities across the world, and would like to truly transform how we understand our world. Thank you. I could go on.
Oh, you're beautiful. You could go on, and I might let you. No. So before we continue with, let's go to Juliana. I'd love to hear from you. What brought you here?
Thank you, Suzanne, and thank you, Glenn, and everyone for this space. To start, I will tell shortly about my background so that it brings also the context. I am an artist. I have been working in social mobilization and transformation in Colombia from a systemic perspective for the last 15 years. I have been working in the framework of the armed conflict in Colombia, and that's how I come here. I am here because I have been working around transformation, and as a systemic thinker, I work a lot with mapping, and I have found in mapping an important work to do for the sake of transformation, mostly from a systemic perspective. So in this work stream, I have been part of the mapping the mappers, we called it afterwards, because in this whole work of mapping and analysis, the work stream of mapping, it's like redundant, if we call it that way. And what we have been working with the convener of this work stream, Scott David, with whom we have been asking ourselves, what and who do we really need to map? I think are very simple, very simple questions, but are very deep in terms of, if we don't start, for example, understanding which are those taxonomies that we need to be looking at before mapping. So it has been, and in our agenda, what we have been doing is mostly first understand before mapping, because this is, I think, in today's world where there is a lot about systemic change, many systemic things, systemic thinking. And when we talk about mapping, I think a mistake we do very often is to go direct into maps without asking ourselves, what are we putting in those maps? And a map doesn't mean to be systemic because it is a map. So really, if we are talking about systemic work and the systemic approach, what do we need to be mapping and how not to overlap maps so that it really works at a macro and a micro level. Integrating so that it remains coherent with the systemic approach. So these are some basic lines. And as I do believe, complex thinking has to do a lot about simplicity with wisdom and deepness. So yeah, this is like an opening of the work we have been doing in this work stream.
That's wonderful. And before we move to Mutizwa, I just want to reflect on something that I've heard in all three so far, which is the deep intentionality of this working group and this interest in actually getting to the root of an ethos before getting into action. And I think that's so important. It's one of the things that I feel has been a real, a special factor around the transformation systems mapping and analysis working group. Mutizwa, welcome. What brought you in?
Thank you very much, Suzanne. So I'll introduce myself first. And my name is Mutizwa Mukute, and like Tsitsi, my sister, I'm Zimbabwean, and I'm speaking to you from Rhodes, which is our capital city. My passion lies in co-generating and sharing knowledge and in collective innovation towards building healthy connections and relationships between people, and also between people and the planet. And this is why my academic background is in biodiversity management and in environmental education. This is also why my professional life, most of it has been spent working for and with national, regional, and international networks. My passion and professional background is what inspired me to join the Transformations Systems Mapping and Analysis Working Group. I was so excited about the energy and the purpose of the group when I joined it, to the extent that I started by joining 3 sub-working groups. But in the end, I decided to invest most of my energy in the same group that Tsitsi talked about, the Latin Africa Exchange sub-working group. And my participation was largely through co-authoring the concept note on the exchange. I worked with members of the subgroup to identify African and Latin American philosophies, approaches, and ways of knowing and of relating that could inform the substance of the exchange. During the journey with friends from Latin America, I came to realize the similarities between our own philosophy of Ubuntu and the in Lakesh concept philosophy in Latin America. My appreciation of the need to look back and build on such important knowledge resources was strengthened. And most importantly, perhaps, being an active member of the Transformation Systems and Mapping and Analysis Working Group as a whole helped me make new meaningful connections, connections with other people and connections with other ways of seeing the world. Now, just to talk about one part of the substance of the concept note that we co-developed, I'll talk about the objectives that we came up with around the exchange. And these include to identify, map, document, share initiatives and innovations, practices, and narratives with potential to contribute to regenerative sustainability and social justice. And Tsitsi talked a lot about the issue of justice, and that was at the core of the kind of things that we seek to address in doing transformations work. To also identify causal explanations behind the successes of relevant initiatives and practices and the potential for scaling them. Then to connect the promising initiatives, practices, and narratives with a view to enriching them. Fourth, we also set out to connect with and expand the existing dialogical, like what we are doing now across networks, and co-learning spaces, networks and social movements concerned with South-South collaboration on systems transformation towards enhancing creative solidarity. We are also thinking about a North-South, South-North kind of collaboration as well. And this is also reflected by the composition of the working group. And finally, also to explore the possibility of reframing transformation systems, regenerative sustainability, and just transformations based on the lived experiences of the South. So these are some of the things that are still quite close to my heart. And that energized me to continue to work in this group of amazing people. Thank you very much, Suzanne.
Oh, thank you. It's really wonderful to have you all today. You can see this is just a small slice of the larger breadth of the network. And, you know, without any further delay, I want to make sure that we can hear from, you know, our founding father, if you will, Glenn Page, on, you know, the details of this network, how it came together, and some of the background. Welcome, Glenn.
Suzanne, thank you, and greetings, everyone. Welcome to this Catalyst 2030 event. And wow, it is so great to have you team members here. And you just beautifully illustrated the power, the potential, and insight into the learning. And that's what we're going to be talking about, some of the learning from this system. My name is Glenn Page. I'm here in Portland, Maine, in the Gulf of Maine. I'll show a slide in a second, but I'm also part of Working Group 12 for Catalyst 2030, and that's the pathway to evaluation. So we're working both within the Catalyst 2030 network and in the development of this very new network that we started roughly about the same time as Catalyst 2030. So I'm going to do a quick screen share. We'll begin with a whale shark image. And then go right to just a little bit of an intro and a background of what is this thing that we're talking about, this transformation systems mapping and analysis working group. And as I say, I come to you from the shores of the Gulf of Maine. This is an important area because this is an ocean cluster modeled after the Iceland ocean cluster, but it's also on Wabanaki territory. And my ancestry goes back to this area 10 generations. And I know my ancestors took advantage of broken treaty promises, and I continue to privilege from these broken treaty promises. And this reality is central to our work. And this work that Tsitsi was referring to, this decolonization work that is so critically important, and it's woven throughout. But this is sort of the headquarters, the hub of the network. But the reason why this whole thing came together was to really try to figure out how we could bring high quality collaboration together in the decade that matters most. So this was at the beginning of the last January 2020. This is before COVID hit, but we knew this decade is absolutely central to life on Earth, both human systems and ecological systems. So how do we better connect, see, and accelerate this kind of transformative change that we need? And a core partner in this was Per Olsen at the Stockholm Resilience Center, and Krisztina Jonas, who introduced herself at the beginning, is also at the Stockholm Resilience Center, an absolute powerhouse of insight and adaptation, who've given us all sorts of incredible frameworks around the concept of transformation. And indeed, Per Olsen hosted the Transformations Conference series back in 2015. But it really started in many ways with the SDG Transformations Forum, which was born out of that conference series, but also included networks such as the Regenerative Communities Network, the Blue Marble Evaluation Network. I see Zenda Ophir is on the call. She's a global leader in this forum, but also the International Geodesign Collaboration. So it was really among these four networks that each one of them had an interest in mapping and having a working group dedicated to mapping. So the question was, could we maybe create a global network that links all of these different interests, very diverse, but interests together in a way that could create a meta working group. And the answer was a resounding yes. We launched it back in April 22nd, so a year ago, this last month of 2020. And just in the first month and a half, we had over 135 people join from 27 countries, and it continues to expand. So some early learning that we'll be sharing with you is how important it is to create transformative agency that's truly shared across the network. And I think the introductions from each of our panelists really illustrated that. And networks, like transformation systems, have multiple phases. So paying attention to the phase that we're in, and in each phase, there are different processes and strategies. So learning how to evolve strategy as the network develops itself. And not only are we learning how to better see transformation systems that are out there in the real world, but we're also learning how to see ourselves, how to see the network. And I'll introduce that in a minute with this absolutely incredible process of social systems mapping, learning how to navigate emergence. And in that, what we mean is how do we better see the complexity? And I liked what Juliana mentioned about the importance of simplifying frameworks to embrace and understand complexity and the agency that can be mobilized within a complex network. And this idea of embracing, working with diversity across the network, so incredibly important. And that really takes quite a range of frames and learning because you never quite get that right. And it's always something to aspire towards, to get better at. Recognizing the different forms that opportunity, the windows, we talk about windows of opportunity opening and closing, what that may mean and how to navigate through those windows in the generative type solutions that could emerge. And finally, this understanding of multiple scales. So thinking about cross-scale relationships, but also from the micro to the meso and how that relates. So what we'll do is just share some insight over what this working group is all about. As I mentioned, the social systems mapping process, this is through greater than the sum. This is led by the amazing Krisztina Capra. And what she has done is she's committed, who is an absolute amazing systems mapper. She's committed to using her and her partner Tim's remarkable platform of greater than the sum to actually help see our network, see our system. So this is actually where, if you become a member of this group, this is where you enter in. So you begin in the onboarding process, engaging with the map, and you can begin to see issues of, well, what kind of interests and expertise is there? Who are the members? What's their expertise and interests over time? And we can also see the development of this working group over time. Krisztina has done a beautiful job of mapping the development of this network. So this was the second quarter, the third quarter, and the fourth quarter of last year regarding the development of the network and the relationships across the connections. So huge opportunities. And we'll put a link to this map so you can noodle around and learn both how to see the network itself, but also how to understand what the power is going on inside of this thing that we call Transformation Systems Mapping and Analysis Working Group. And we can see deeper into the work streams themselves. And here is just a very, very quick insight into the work streams. So as Juliana mentioned, there is a work stream dedicated to seeing who are the people around the world doing large-scale systems mapping. Juliana, who you met just a moment ago, and Scott David, who she mentioned, who was working at the World Economic Forum for many years, but now he's innovation director at Shapeable. So the two of them have done absolutely amazing work. And also a second work stream around understanding academic and career pathways around transformation systems mapping, led by David Takahashi and supported brilliantly as a fellow Mauricio Nunez Opuerto from the Sacred Valley in Peru, a restoration ecologist, and a really incredible young man doing remarkable work in the Sacred Valley. A second or a third work stream is all around what might be essential elements that could form a toolkit. And this work stream has actually evolved into what's called Imagine.World, led by Kirk Bergstrom, president at WorldLink, and also Gurpreet Singh at Skoll Foundation. Gurpreet of much Catalyst 2030 fame, and also supported as a fellow by Dylan O'Neill at the University of Colorado, Boulder. A key question is the theory behind this. What is a transformation system, and what are the knowledge systems that allow us to see into that? Led beautifully by Catherine McGowan at Mount Royal University in Calgary, Canada, and Sam Maddie serving as the fellow to that important group. A key aspect of this, and in the previous working group, the theory group is working in integrating with this particular work stream around mapping the inner dimensions. We have learned from people like Karen O'Brien and others the importance of understanding the inner dimensions. What are the inner realities of our own transformation? Led beautifully by Lee Eyre, and this is also what Krisztina Jonas was mentioning, her participation in this working group, and the fellow who started this process with us and was contributing hugely to the work with the principals is Catharina Braun, who's just recently graduated from Windesheim in the Netherlands. And Tsitsi mentioned, and Mutizwa also mentioned the Latin Afrique exchange, beautifully co-led by Tsitsi and also Melina and Trix Angel. And it's really an absolute stellar example of how this idea of understanding what does an African transformation system look like? What does a Latin transformation system look like, as opposed to having something imposed? And I think that concept note that Mutizwa was mentioning is beautifully illustrative of the power of that particular work stream. Another one that I happen to lead is a very place-based. We're beginning with the Gulf of Maine, one of the most rapidly warming systems on the planet, and understanding and better seeing the transformation systems, beautifully supported by Sam, who's our chief cartographer here at SustainaMetrix here in the Gulf of Maine. And this was also mentioned earlier, the indicators, scorecards, dashboards for mapping transformation. This work stream has basically completed its work, led beautifully by Bill Bowie at R3.0 and Hugo Araujo, who leads 7 Vortex and has been another huge contributor to the idea and the concept of systems mapping through very much an indigenous lens. If folks on the call have not heard of 7 Vortex, I encourage you to look that up, as well as this organization R3.0 that has annual conferences. Really important work. Unifying framework for integrating. How do we actually see the different transformation systems and mapping the integration across the SDGs? A very, very bold ambition that is still underway. Jim Ritchie Dunham, who's leading it at the Institute of Strategic Clarity, he's convening with co-convener Adam Henowitz, who's a postdoc at University of Sheffield, but also a group, and this was led by Per Olsen, working on basically the anatomy of a crisis. And this work stream is now merging with our newest work stream, which I'll mention in a minute, around decolonizing systems mapping. But this work stream was beautifully supported by Stephen Meja at Stockholm Resilience Center. And this is the one that Suzanne leads so brilliantly, because having all these work streams doing good work is really not enough. We're rooted in a core set of principles. We're rooted in the principles of equity, inclusion, and diversity. And Suzanne does absolutely a lovely job of bringing the different work streams together and has created a monthly process of transformative fire with Christine Capra, and supported beautifully by Bruni Conti and Katarina Braun. So amazing work that we'll hear more of. Also a relatively new work stream that's come out with Steve Waddell, who is the pioneer behind the SDG Transformations Forum, but also with Peter Jones at OCAD University in Toronto, and supported by Johnny Norton as a fellow, looking at the next economies and what they're calling bounce beyond, and the importance of understanding these economic systems post-COVID, and how do we map those? And then finally, our newest that we're so incredibly proud of, the moment for this is now of decolonizing systems mapping, with some remarkable leadership of Milani Melanie Goodchild at Turtle Island Institute, Terilyn Farron at Turtle Island Institute, Dan McCarthy at Waterloo University, supported by Erin Alexiuk, also getting her PhD at Waterloo University, and Per Olsen. So this is a good example of blending of two of the work streams. So one of the things as we do this, we know we're learning a bit about what it means to actually do a global network around a bold, ambitious idea, such as transformation systems, but there's so much we don't know. So this is an opportunity to hear more from our panelists around lessons learned. So back to you, Suzanne.
Thank you so much, Glenn. So that was so succinct, and let's just take a breath now to think about lighting and igniting the fire of transformation beyond the network horizon. The topic at hand today. So at the Transformation Systems Mapping and Analysis Working Group, many of the people on this call and many more people who are not on this call really engaged with the discussion around what does it take? What will it take to actually create the greatest amount of transformation? And we led ourselves into a several-month journey around what does it look like to have collaboration that is also deeply inclusive and also provides for practice. And so we used the social systems map and also recognition of different kinds of learning styles, expertise, and forms of knowledge that we had all through our working group. And it was a very rich experience, I will say. One thing that we cherished and honored was that we wanted to see a really healthy mix of rigorous science and also boundless creativity, recognizing that both of those ingredients can lead to new thinking and innovation. And so as we consider what it means to be in deep relationship where there's transformation, but also moving at an amplified pace consistent with the urgency of the issues that we're facing on planet Earth and in society. We went through several discussions, especially in the context of COVID-19. The past year, people have really been experiencing the digital, remote location interaction. How do we become connected? How do we become transformational when we're not in person? And what are some of the ways that we've found transformation, either within the TSM&A, but also we'll talk to the panelists first to hear, from their perspective, what has provided for deep connection, what has actually led to them experiencing that the process and the structure of this working group specifically actually helped them light a fire of action for themselves. And so what are conditions about this working group that really led to your own experience of being either empowered or amplified or connected in a deep way for your own practice? And while we're hearing from them, we're really interested in learning about anything that's valuable from the audience that has really enhanced your online collaborations during this time, and what has served you in the relational field, because we recognize that for too long, we've been kind of limited to our value just in transaction with each other around development, around all the things that are pressing of our time. And it's this, sort of categorizing of each other and taking from each other rather than coming together, deep learning, getting into relationship where then a lot more value emerges. And so that's one ingredient we really heard from a lot of people at Transformation Systems Mapping and Analysis. The opportunity to deeply connect in the relational field brings about more. So let's start with, we'll go in maybe a mixed up order from the last time. This time, Juliana, is there something that you felt really supported either as a process or structure from Transformation Systems Mapping and Analysis that actually served you specifically in your work or in your practice or even in your personal life would be?
Yeah, I think many things, of course, and some of my reflections or learnings, I might have been gathering them through conversations, so are not only mine for sure, but I will name some of them that I think I highlight at a personal and professional level in terms of this systemic work. we do. I think one has to do a lot about change the paradigm from doing to holding. And this was, this is easy to say. I think we say this a lot. But when we started this work and the pandemic started with us, almost at the same time, I have been trying to understand this during 1 year, because I have been passing through the difficulty of letting things be created from holding space, from holding processes, and stop putting guilt into not doing. So it's kind of abstract, but to making it simple would be, yeah, from doing to holding. That's a very important piece, I think, for systemic work also, and for personal life. The other one, I would call it stop talking about decreasing and theories about how we need to change the world, and synchronizing, lowering our rhythms, because we need to focus on life. And this for me also at a personal but also professional level, it's like to embody coherence. And the third one, not to be talk a lot here, I will call it trust on expertise on that we all are experts, or everyone is expert on something, so that from trust we can dive into rawness and the unknown. So we already know we all know something, and that's not important. The really important thing is what we don't know, and wanting to be together in finding out not what we know, but what we don't know. So for me, those are the, I will highlight today those three.
Does anybody else have goosebumps? So you can see why we love this network. Just a lot of wisdom coming through. We don't have a lot of time before we have to move into closeout. So I'd like to see, perhaps we'll move to Tsitsi, and then I'll ask for polling from the audience. We have a closing poll, and then during that polling, we'll have a couple other, okay? We'll do the last couple.
Thanks, Suzanne. In our Workstream, I think we are very strongly connected by a value base that just celebrates our humanity. We come from a place and a space of disadvantage. We are not shy to actually put the issues that have caused us pain on the table. And through our collective energies, we process that and try to reframe it to say, how else can it be, so that we can remain, the beautiful people that were created by our creator, however we define that creator as well. And therefore, one of the things that we have fundamentally challenged is what is perhaps commonly referred to in the development discourse as blueprints, as best practices, because we feel that they are contextualized, or they are conceptualized in contexts that really impose certain ways of feeling, certain ways of seeing, certain ways of believing, and they push for a particular paradigm that has been sort of forced down on those recipients of development, which has actually left us at times paralyzed, because we don't know what that actually means. It's so foreign to our normal being. And therefore, we have tended then to just tick boxes in order to get the development aid, because if we don't comply and if we don't meet these requirements, we will be left disadvantaged, and therefore we cannot access the resources. So the development discourse itself is a discourse that perhaps emphasizes Western conceptions of development processes without actually equally acknowledging that, or at least being humble, to say when we frame our logical frameworks, our results chains, our theory of change, we need to be humble enough to equally engage those that are disadvantaged, whose situation we're also trying to influence for the better, so that they too can actually define what will work for them. And therefore, because our development interventions suffer from a disease that I call projectitis, so it's a tight boundary, it's a project of a specific duration with specific financial resources and technical support, which at the end of the day has to be done according to certain requirements of that person with the power. And therefore we are left as consultants, for example, or development practitioners. Our role has also been to facilitate, regression, in the sense that we haven't been humble enough to actually appreciate that these people are already in their own processes of development. So how do we bring this additional resource to enable that process to be better, to be efficient, to be more effective? Instead, we've ignored it. We have pretended that it doesn't exist, and therefore we've imposed our own, because we also want to be paid at the end of the day. So we are trying now to come back and say, how can we respect that which is already there? And how can we have power with, so that at least our beneficiaries, our recipients, by the way we even challenge those terms, they are actually also part of that developmental process in a meaningful way, so that at the end of the day, it's their process, and however they define it and whatever it is that they want to put into it is what we then get to work with. Unfortunately, there's not so many perhaps philanthropists or development partners who would like to work from this particular framework or way of relating, and would like to bring them on board, so that at the end of the day, hopefully we can co-create something that can actually celebrate the resources that Mother Earth has given us, where everyone can actually be themselves and equally enjoy what our Creator has given us. And we'll continue, for example, in my culture, I am from a Shona tribe. We are very oral in nature. We love to sing, we love to dance. We have our own belief systems, and we also would then want to bring them into the process, so that we are also celebrating that and really claiming back, what we have lost because of our experiences of colonization. So we speak with a lot of passion. We sing, we dance, and we celebrate. And therefore, I think that is something that we really want to honor and use as positive energy as we co-create some of these processes. Thank you.
Thank you, Tsitsi. And speaking of singing and dancing and celebrating, we agreed through our design collaborative process that there's actually something about coming together in ritual that actually leads to transformation on a level that we can't even put our fingers on. And so just to bring this section to a close, then I'll allow Krisztina and Mutizwa to also speak. The result of our design collaborative process, while the working groups were working, we were getting leadership and many participants in to discuss what would be the best format for deeper collaboration in the design that you've just been hearing from all these wonderful people that responded to this. And the answer was that we should be doing a monthly meeting that actually allowed for storytelling from many different kinds of traditions that related to transformation. And that meeting is being convened around what we're calling a transformational fire. And that there's a format for that meeting, but it also provides for singing and dancing and music. You can use a PowerPoint if that's what you like, or you can have everybody meditate if that's what you like, right? This is for people to bring their energy into the mix. And in companion with that, we're going to be doing a monthly use of the social systems map that corresponds with and pulls from those lessons at the monthly fire meeting. So you can absolutely join Glenn already put the link in for the broader working group, and then you'll also get invited into the working group by joining the FIRE. So either way, those are two pathways, but I just gave you the link to sign up for the FIRE. You'll still be invited into the working group that way as well. So either pathway. So the polling question that we're asking today, go ahead, Karina, thank you so much for doing that, is which 3 aspects, we're asking you to choose 3 of these aspects that are the most important for inclusion of a broad range of perspectives and thinking in a network. So you get to choose 3, and we'd love to see which ones come out. These are the kinds of questions that we grappled with also internally. We'd love to see how, others in the world are relating to the solutions that we derive. So Krisztina, we'd love to hear, what were some moments or what was something that really ignited your fire?
Yeah, connected to what Glenn and also Juliana mentioned, and also to Glenn's slide, to what we know and what we don't know. The transformative co-creation for me emerged in addressing not only what we do know and what we do not know, but also addressing maybe even unintentionally what we do not know that we don't know, in a way that we co-create a space in trusting each other and trusting the wisdom that everyone has and everyone has to offer, and also everyone has to learn something. But this wisdom of acknowledging or even sensing that there are many things that we don't know, and that could be this underlying ground and soil with all the roots that is actually the foundation of things that we do know and things we don't know. And just to create that space where we can reflect on that from very different, still unifying perspective was really powerful to me, and also refreshing to see really emergent and inspiring ways of connecting, and also learning something new every time. Again, understanding from my own perspective that there were a lot of things I didn't know, I don't know, and also seeing that realization in other people's eyes. That's just really beautiful to see. And it can be also something conceptual or practical related to transformation. It can be something about from a discipline, maybe someone haven't really embraced yet, but it can also be really personal, talking about inner dimensions. It can be really contextual and specific about how me as a human being relate to this intention to work and contribute to this community of transformation. And there were also a lot of realization there. So when it comes to things that we don't know, I learned a lot practically and professionally, but also maybe even more when it comes to personal, just as a human being, and embracing the wisdom that everyone has in them. So for me, that ignited the fire each and every time.
That's beautiful. And I saw a comment actually that really reflects that as well. You should be seeing your shared poll results right now, which miraculously really reflect the TSM&A's collective process as well. So thank you for that. And I want to invite Mutizwa to bring us home, because we're about to close in 1 minute. So Mutizwa, what would you like to say to everybody as we wind down this fantastic group? Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Suzanne. I think there are basically 4 things that ignited my fire to participate online. One is to do with discussing things that I care about. Secondly, it's things that matter in the context in which I operate, in which I live. Thirdly, it's things that gave me the feeling that I could develop my agency to do something about the kind of issues that I was facing in my personal and professional lives. And finally, I think it was the emotional connection between me and the people that I was relating with. Thank you very much, Suzanne.
Thank you so much. And Glenn, do you have any last and final words you'd like to share? And thank you, everybody. It's been just another really fantastic experience.
Just to say thank you all, and thank you, Suzanne. Beautifully led, and thank you everyone for joining us.
Have a great Catalyzing Change Week, everybody. See you in some other sessions.
Thanks, Suzanne. Thanks, everybody. Thank you. Sending you love.
Love. We need that. That's the transformation right there.
Great job. Thank you all.
Oh, let's get a different one. Love in all its forms.
Thank you.
Thank you.